You can do something and feel like you are being purposeful, that you are fulfilling a purpose, but are you fulfilling your purpose? That is a clear distinction. And I felt I was being purposeful. I still feel this way. I think the key is to make people feel heard and to solidify their importance, but also let them know, enlighten them on other people's importance as well. Give yourself grace. Nobody's success looks the same. It's more so success looks different for everyone. What makes you a failure is never trying. Trying and failing is not a failure.
Hey there, everybody. So today I'm super excited to introduce to you Dr. Tia Warrick. She's a public health professional, researcher, and CEO of Lesus Consulting, who discovered the hard way that success without fulfillment is just an elaborate performance. And after losing both her parents, her primary motivation for everything she accomplished, Tia found herself questioning the very foundation of her achievements. And this crisis, it led her to develop the practical frameworks for recognizing when you're performing success versus actually living it, and how to rebuild your purpose when your original why disappears. Now she helps other professionals navigate the transition from achievement-focused living to purpose-driven impact through her consulting work and her upcoming books. Everybody, I'd like you to welcome Dr. Tia Warrick. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it.
Great to have you. Great to have you. So Tia, before we get started, if you could just take us back to before you lost your parents. You were achieving a lot of stuff professionally, but you said that you were essentially performing success rather than living it. And so back then, what did performance look like in your daily life, and how did you not realize that you were trapped in it at that time?
Yeah, so I came from a big family in Brooklyn, New York, and it was just, growing up, I was always the one that got really great grades. It wasn't always like that. I was actually a really late learner, but I was bullied a lot. And so I personally made it my own vendetta to be the best always. And so I kind of just been labeled like the smart one out of the family, the one that, is going to get the great grades. So that kind of pressure added to and fueled the entire process for me to have this performative success. And so it started off really fine. Like I skipped a grade in high
Yeah.
school and I graduated from my bachelor's degree early. And I was the first person in the history of my college to finish my PhD in 1 year. And it all felt really, really great because I knew that those are goals that I did set for myself. I wasn't necessarily doing it for anybody else, but I set this unrealistic expectation to put this pressure on me because of the environment that I grew up in. And for the longest time, I was convincing myself this is what I really wanted. Now, I don't regret any of the decisions that I made. However, I look back and I think on a lot of the moments or things that I missed out on that I can't get back.
What was that environment like? I know you kind of touched on it briefly. Can you go into a little bit more detail that was it what was that environment like that was kind of fostered that acceleration for yourself?
Yeah, so the environment looked like for me any given day, 16 to 18 hours, like absolute dedication. For in high school, it was easy. I didn't need to study. I got hundreds on everything. It honestly came very natural to me. It wasn't until I got to college where things became really complex, not necessarily because of the information I was learning, but because I came from, first generation family and there was no savings for college. So I had to work 4 jobs while going to school. And that was really the first time being far away from my family. It was about 5 hours away in a new state, a new environment. And I had no money, like at all. And so I had to find ways to essentially make it through college. And so and I'm sure a lot of college students or people who've gone through college who didn't have a scholarship or even had a family to help, they understand that struggle of where's my next meal or how am I going to pay for my books? It was that on steroids for me. It was not only that, but my housing, everything. So I had to be really creative about how I went about that. So looking through every type of financial aid possibility. And then I grabbed every job on campus that I could. I didn't have a car, so I couldn't even get a job off campus because where we were, it was pretty remote, the college that I went to. And so it was a lot of work. And when you add that financial burden on top of the rigorous studies, yeah, it definitely took a toll on me. But at the time, I didn't realize it. And I just kept pushing. And so um, sooner or later, it will definitely catch up to you. So
So I, so you grew up in, was it Brooklyn, right? Okay, so you grew up in Brooklyn, and then you went to, when you did go to college, was it within that general area, or did you have to travel quite a bit?
I traveled all the way to Pennsylvania. So I went from New York City to Pennsylvania. It was about 6 hours, almost 6 hours away. And where we were in Pennsylvania, it wasn't like in Philly, or it was like a rural area where you do have to drive just to go to the supermarket. And so if you didn't have a car, it was really hard um, to do anything really. And you were kind of just stuck on campus. So
So you have brothers and sisters as well?
I have, I have
You have
15.
15. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. What number would you be on on the scale of 1 to 10?
I'm number
You're number
6.
6. Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm just cool.
So very big family. And again, all first generation. My mom and dad, both immigrant, came to the US, had their citizenship, and they raised us. They worked, they weren't working glamorous jobs. My mom was a CNA, so she was a nurse and did real estate. And my dad, he worked as a chef. So he worked as a line cook, and he also worked at different restaurants throughout New York City. Um, and somehow they were able to work together, and we lived, in a house. We didn't live in, by any means like, luxury, but we definitely didn't live, in any kind of rough environment. It was a house. It was a very small house, and we were crammed, and we shared a lot of rooms. And there was only one bathroom, and it was not the most glamorous life, but it wasn't the worst. And I think that that environment, though, definitely from a physical environment, it wasn't bad. But obviously, with every family, there's dynamics and things that you go through when you live with that many people, right? So there's those kinds of things. We didn't always get along, and there was always arguing, and it was never boring and always loud. That's what happens when the house is that full. And it was really hard. My parents was working all the time. And so a lot of it fell on the next eldest sibling in the house to kind of take care of the rest of the siblings in the house. And so where I am in that line of siblings, being number 6, I have such a gap from my older siblings that when it came time for me to be old enough to take care of my younger siblings, I didn't really have the older siblings around. So it was me and my younger siblings for a bit. And so, yeah, I did have to work really hard. I went to school. I came back. I had to pick my siblings up, help them with their homework, do dinner, wash the dishes, do my homework, do chores, get their clothes ready for the next day. And so it was very disciplined and very difficult. Um, but it also prepared me a lot. I would say at the time, I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now. At the time, I was definitely going through the angry teenager stage and just not understanding and just having all this anger in the world. And I think that also fueled me to want to like be done with high school quicker. That's why I probably skipped a grade. So,
Yeah, you have a fascinating experience growing up. So when you were growing up, like who? So obviously, when you're in that position, right? It's like what, depending on what was the gap between you and like your like the oldest?
so
Yeah,
this,
at the,
yeah. Well, okay. So the dynamic was a little
yeah.
weird because the next eldest was my brother, and he's about 5 years
Oh,
older than me. But he was my brother, so he didn't do anything. It was the girls that took care. So like he doesn't count. So the next eldest girl was my sister, and she is 10 years older than me. So that is a huge gap, right? And so when I say gap, like not that my brother doesn't exist, but I meant in the sense of of actual responsibilities. For me, it was a 10-year gap, and by that point she had moved out already, and so a lot of it did fall on me to take care of my younger siblings, which I loved doing. I loved spending time with them, picking them up from school. I used to bring them to the library because we didn't always have internet because It's really expensive at that time. My parents couldn't afford the internet all the time, but we had a TV, we had all the other things. It's just that the extra luxury items we didn't always have. And so we would go to the library to do our homework. I would take them to the park that was right next to our house, just so that they can play outside and not be cooped up all the time. And yeah, I basically I was taking care of them. It was really hard. Actually, when I left to college, I felt very guilty and almost ashamed because I felt like I was leaving them. But I knew I needed to do it because I had to, you know, essentially take care of me, right? If you're on a plane going down, you're going to have to put the mask on first before you help somebody else. And so that's just what I had to do. But yeah, I remember how hard it was for me to actually go to college.
So that was something that was already being done, like from with all your like your sisters that were older, they were doing that with you, and so
It's
was
just
passed
passed
down. So that
down.
was
Yep, it
something
just went
you
down the
modeled.
line.
You're like, okay, this is how it's done, and then so you were able to
This
replicate,
is how they had to do it, and I just knew that I was next in line, and that's just what had to be done. Yeah.
and that was something that was instilled in terms of like how to do that, right, by your parents as well, even though they're really busy and they were working quite a bit.
Yeah, when they were home, like, they made sure, like, they would say, "When I get back, this and this and this and this and this and this needs to be done." And it was just, this is the precedent. This is what the responsibilities are. And it was very clear that we needed to do that. Yeah.
And so you already so you already knew like you had certain success metrics. Like, okay, this is what success looks like in terms of like, okay, being able to take care of the house, being able to watch over the siblings, being able to get these things done while they're away.
Yeah. And I mean, at the time, I absolutely would rather have hung out with my friends or I don't know, have a teenage experience, but I did not appreciate it then, but I do appreciate it now, right? Then I was like, oh my gosh, my parents are the worst. Why are they doing this to me? This is so much responsibility. I just want to be a kid. Like, I feel like I didn't have that experience as much as I wanted. But I look back at it and I don't even care. Like, I am very like, I'm more as I've gotten older, I have really started to deeply appreciate the things I was able to learn. Now, could I have learned that sometimes in a better way? Sure. It left to a little bit of trauma there, but I think that your experiences are it happens and a lot of it you don't have control over, but you can take those experiences and you can turn it into success, whether it's good or bad.
Most definitely.
Mhm.
And it's when you were so the motivating so like when you were so like kind of like when you're going so that all that stuff it kind of motivated you to kind of get through school quicker. Was that what it was?
Yep, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to go to college. I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna, like, finally have my experience, no more siblings," and it was just the idea as a teenager, right? Until it actually happened, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm really leaving home. I'm going this far from my family. I'm leaving my little siblings," and, like, I cared for them so much, I thought of them as my children, so I was just it was really hard, like, in theory, I really wanted that, and then when it came time, I was absolutely terrified, but if you don't do the things that terrify you, then you'll never grow, right? So, I had to.
College. You said you completed your PhD in 1 year, right? But then, how long were you actually in college
Yes.
though? Like,
So, 3.5 years for bachelor's, 2 for master's, 1 so 5, 6 years? 5 years.
and you already knew. Did you
Yep,
know
about
at
5.
what point did you know what you wanted to do?
So I thought I was gonna be a cardiothoracic surgeon, honestly. I always wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and I loved everything about surgery. I shadowed doctors in undergrad, at the college that I went to, and I loved everything about the medical field. Absolutely loved it until I actually learned about the power structure. And if you work within a hospital, you really don't have as much say or sway as a doctor as you think you do. There's high malpractice insurance. I respect medical doctors. I do. I help train them for clinical trials now, but it's not what I wanted. I didn't like the time. I didn't like anything about it. So the idea that I had going into it was one thing. And then when I actually seen what it was, I was like, I don't want that. I actually want to be the person that tells them what to do. I want to be the boss basically. It became very clear to me that I didn't like the structure in which they worked. So it just wasn't for me.
And then so you figured that out in was it like undergrad or was it like
Yeah, my second year in college, I was shadowing, and actually, it was a neurosurgeon I was shadowing, and it was in the ER. And there was this guy who was at a motorcycle accident. I'll never forget it. Skid. Right. So he had part of the brain exposed in the flap. Sorry if this is too, too graphic. The fascia of the skull was, exposed, and there's all this blood, and they were just right in the middle. And I'm just standing in the back because I'm just shadowing and I'm volunteering and I'm just watching. I'm not squeamish or anything, but I just seen like how many people came together to save this person's life. And I was so like, you know, inspired. But then also what the issue that this particular patient had, there was no current treatments that could have helped him at all. And it was actually an investigational treatment that they were able to get him into that helped. And so that was the moment where I thought, I want to, I want to do that. I want to go into a space where I have, um, the autonomy to work in the medical field, but I want to be a part of the innovation. Like, I don't want to work within the system. I have, like, the way my mind works is that I don't want to be confined to a certain way that things go. And I want to be able to think of something and have my mind go as far as it can. And I want to be an innovator. And so for me, I just knew that I wouldn't thrive. Would I be a good doctor? Sure. I would be very respectful. I would be great with patients, but it wasn't my passion. My passion is to innovate, to find the gaps, to find the areas in where nobody is going and no one's speaking, and connect those concepts and to drive things forward. And I knew that that's what I really wanted to do.
And so once you as you started to realize that, then your path, what did you do to make sure that it kind of fit your path? So that
So after I did that, what I did was I made sure, because I actually was in a medical science major, I changed it to biology my second year of college. And so because I changed it to biology, the medical science is a little bit harder because there's all these extra classes. I've actually taken at that point about 20 credits a semester while working 4 jobs so that I didn't have to pay as much for college. So by the time I changed my major, I didn't actually have that many credits left. And that's how I was able to graduate early. And so that was just what I decided. I decided I was going to get my bachelor's in biology. I wasn't going to do the full medical science major. I was going to go ahead and get my master's in epidemiology because I learned that that's where clinical research, innovation in medical science, epidemiologists really learned about study design and all those things. So I really wanted to get a background in that and really understand that study design portion of it and data. And so I knew that that was going to be my plan, and that's what I went ahead with.
just from a curiosity standpoint, how the heck were you able to work 4 jobs while still going to school?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was an RA, which is a resident assistant, to pay for my housing because I had to find a way to get that covered. That wasn't covered through financial aid. And so I was an RA. Then the second job was I worked in the ISLGP office, which is the International Student Like and Global Programming Office on campus. And I worked with the actual kitchen for the cafeteria. And we put on all these cultural programs. International students from all over the world, India, Armenia, China, Ukraine, everywhere would come, do a visiting semester at the college, and I wanted to make sure that they felt welcome. So we did all these different type of themes. My family's personally from the Caribbean, so of course I did a Caribbean theme as well. I love doing those things. So doing all those programs, I set up a food pantry where I made sure students who were food insecure like me was able to have access to non-perishable items, and it was completely anonymous. So people would donate. We would check for expiration dates. We'd check for making sure everything is sealed properly. Somebody will submit a ticket. We'd make a bag. No questions asked. Didn't ask for name. Didn't ask for nothing. You picked up a bag and you went. And it was just a completely anonymous kind of thing to make people feel safe and not ashamed of their situation. The third job that I did, I tutored many students. I tutored many students. I think there was 2 classes. There was the anatomy and physiology class where I got a lot of students for, and then the statistics class, which I got a lot of students for. So I helped them with that type of tutoring.
They're all your peers as well, or
And
were
then
they like much younger?
they were actually they
Your
were my
peers.
peers, or they were older. So there were actually it was pretty funny. I was helping seniors pass like a lot of different stats classes because I don't know why stats came easy to me. but stats for a lot of students, and I'm sure many people could probably attest to this. Stats was just they hated it. And I was like, I don't know. I love math and I love statistics and I'm so passionate about it. And I was like, I don't know. And then, I made it fun, made it in a way that they can understand. And yeah, so that was my third job. And it paid me the most because I could set my own rate, my own hours. I didn't do it through the school. Um, because then they would have just given me minimum wage, which was like $7.25. I was like, what am I going to do with that? Um, and the fourth job that I did was I was a student ambassador. So I did tours for prospective students and incoming families to the college. So
And so with all those, it's like, yeah, you were able to, okay, so you went through that process, you paid for your school, you did your master's, you did your PhD, and then what? And then it's like, so you're going at it, you're like nailing, like you're like every step
yeah,
of the way.
I'm just
You're thriving,
driving
thriving,
it
thriving.
forward. And it was not always like 100% perfect. Like when I graduated with my bachelor's, I being from New York City, you don't need a license, right? So I was like the summer before I had graduated, because I graduated in the winter, not in May. So it was a December graduation. And so that summer prior to that fall that I graduated, I finally passed my driver's license. So to make people feel better, I'm not perfect, everybody. I failed my driver's license like 5 times. So, but it was on the fifth time that I did pass my license because I never had to drive being from New York City. But I, again, little minimal driving experience, rented a U-Haul truck and drove all the way to Buffalo from where I was, which was about an 8-hour drive. Again, new driver. And I went and moved into my apartment, sight unseen. So I think, yeah, I saw pictures online, but it could have really went bad, right? I didn't visit this apartment at all. So sight unseen, it's decided, yeah, I'm going to drive 8 hours. Just got my license in a big U-Haul truck with all my stuff. And I'm going to go to Buffalo into an apartment I never saw before. And I mean, it all worked. It all works out. It sounds insane now that I'm thinking about it. But it all worked out. And the first school that I actually went to was Bus State. And I was there for a week and I absolutely hated it. So, and after that week, I transferred into Damon College for my master's. So it wasn't necessarily perfect. But I mean, I still was able to do that in the time that I did, which again, I look back on it and I still have no idea how I did a lot of it. And I think it's because I was living in my own delusion. And it's just really interesting that it's not a bad thing to live in your own delusion and having that power of the mind and that mentality. There is no physical barrier that will stop you when you have a mind that tells you this is what you want to do and you made your mind up about that. Because when you go back and you try to rationalize the things that you did, you probably won't be able to, right? And I think that that's really powerful when I came to that realization. So.
So for the people that are listening in, right? So it's like based on that thought process, like how can they how can they go ahead and apply that in their own life at this moment? Like if they're going through any.
The only difference for me and what I should have done, I should have taken a second and kind of thought to myself, like, I'm doing this because I just want to prove to myself and to everybody else that I can do it. But will this make me happy? Right? I forgot that happy piece. So I had almost all the pieces to the puzzle, but that. And I think that is the most important. And that is the foundation. And so I would tell people to start with what makes you happy? What makes you feel purposeful? What makes you feel fulfilled? Don't think about the money just yet, because I understand passion doesn't always pay the bills. We get this, but just think about what makes you feel fulfilled, um, and start there. And is it enough? Is it moving enough? Is it enough inspiration for you to change your entire mindset to live that reality that you want? And sometimes it's not. Some people really love what they love, but it's not enough for them to shift their whole mentality to do that. And so it has to align your purpose plus what drives you. And I think that's a huge misconception. A lot of times people think that what makes them feel fulfilled also drives them. It's not the case for everyone. And what drove me was proving to myself, somehow I was good enough if I achieved these metrics, but it had nothing to do with whether or not I was fulfilled. And I think a lot of people can really, see themselves in that. And I think that if I had asked that question to myself, I would have went in a different direction, but I would have still worked just as hard. And so it's just something that people need to think about. And I think I would have been just as successful, but in the thing that made me feel like fulfilled. So I think that's a really important question people need to ask themselves before they venture into their delusions and make it a reality.
How were you able to distinguish or determine if it was in alignment for you?
It didn't come so much later, right? It was, after I got my doctorate degree, don't get me wrong, I love everything that I've done. Now, again, if I had the opportunity to do something else, I probably would. But I still have no regrets about what I've accomplished. It was hard work, and I am proud of myself for the things that I've overcome. But it was not until I got my doctorate degree and I was like, okay, like I finally took a breath and I was like, okay, what now? What do I do? What do I do from here? I just been going and going and going and going. Um, and it was a pivotal moment, and I failed myself again. I didn't fail anybody else. I failed myself again because in that pivotal moment, I could have decided to pivot to what fulfilled me. And said I decided to continue on that success path. Um, and I think that that was the moment I realized, and I still didn't make a decision, but I was so close to. And I think again, this is just really is this reality. It's just honest truth. It's not perfect, and I think that people really need to get like it's not going to be perfect, and it's not the way that it portrays itself. And so for me, I sat there and I was like, I could really go in this direction for what I love to do. And what I really actually love to do, to be really honest, is um, I do love mentorship, but I love music more than anything else. And I didn't go in that route at all. Um, and then I was like, oh, I have an opportunity to go this route. And I didn't. And I still went into the route of research, which again, I love research, but does it fulfill me? It makes me feel purposeful. And that's a huge distinction that people need to understand. Like something, you can do something and feel like you are being purposeful, that you are fulfilling a purpose, but are you fulfilling your purpose? And that is something that is a clear distinction. And I felt I was being purposeful. I still feel this way, helping people, help advancing medicine, um, finding cures for diseases. Like it was purposeful. It was very, very, very inspiring, motivational. And part of me absolutely loves that and find that purpose there. But does it truly fill my heart in the way that it should? No. And so that's just something that people need to know. But I do think over time I have started to truly love what I do. It was one of those relationships that just grows the more you do it. And so it wasn't my first love, but it was a love that grew on me. And now I love it. Now I love exactly what I do. And I don't regret it. But again, like I said, it's just people have to make those decisions for themselves. Are you okay with can you live with the decision that you've made? And have you found your fulfillment? And I do think that I was a little bit lost in the industry for a while in the sense of I was good at what I did. I was great at what I did. I got awards for what I did, but did I really love it? And I think that I found a niche through my company on what I actually truly love in that space. And I made that decision that I am really happy with that. And so it's not going to be a linear journey. It's going to be it's not even going to be diagonal. It's not going to be zigzaggy. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be a causal web. Um, and it's just not going to be clean. It's going to be messy. But it's worth it. It needs to be messy because you're not going to be able to truly tease out where you find your fulfillment unless you make a little bit of a mess. It just comes with the territory.
For people listening in, for people listening into the story or like, in this conversation, was there any like challenging moments, in your life that perhaps shaped who you are today or maybe changed the trajectory of your life somehow?
Yeah, I think there were a lot. I don't even know where to start. But I do think my upbringing, 100%, my upbringing shaped who I was. It made me a hard worker. It made me someone who can take on a lot of responsibility, someone who is dependable, someone who can really find solutions to complex issues, because I was in situations where I had to be creative to find solutions to complex issues. And if you can do that in real life, you can apply it to anything, especially in a career.
What's an example of finding a solution to a complex issue?
A lot of the times there's a lot of quarrels or quorums. Everybody has different perspectives, personalities. And that's was a lot of that in my house, right? And oftentimes people won't see eye to eye. They can only see within their own silo and their own perspective. That is literally every organization on the planet, right? Departments don't speak to each other. They know their processes, they know what their perspectives are, they know what they have to do. And while they see that, it often becomes like tunnel vision, and they don't realize it's a collaborative approach, that they need to communicate to this other department. They need to communicate to this other person in order to get this overall job done. And so for me, I constantly, growing up, had to kind of be that connector, right? So I was able to see the bigger picture, and I never really got sucked into that tunnel vision. I was able to stay objective and really see things for exactly what it was. And I constantly had to find the middle ground or be that mediator, right? And so I did gain those skills growing up, and I didn't realize how much of those skills I've actually gained when I actually started applying it in my career, where I had to work in project management and I have to oversee over 18 different departments, over 400 people, and everybody's like very specific about what they do, and they don't realize how it impacts something else. And having that bird's eye view and saying, hey, you need to do this and this and this because of this and this and this. You can stay within your confines, but just make sure you speak to this person, and then opening their minds to say, oh, okay, I understand now. This can affect this and this can affect that. And then really pushing people to communicate and to connect and to truly understand the bigger picture to reach a common goal. And so I think growing up, having to constantly be the mediator, it has become kind of like a superpower in my career. And I think I'm really good at not only connecting people and concepts and collaboration, but breaking things down easy for anybody, regardless of whether or not you've been working in that area from 10 years to 2 years, to truly understand or have at least a really good idea about what we're doing in a situation. And so, yeah, I think it definitely taught me a lot through those types of experiences.
So, as a mediator, when you're working with these different parties, different people, different organizations, what do you think is the key? So, what's the key to like getting these people on the same page?
I think the key is to make people feel heard and to solidify their importance, but also let them know and enlighten them on other people's importance as well. And I think in corporate America and in industry is such a competitive industry. And I think that it's not natural, but there are these insecurities because you want to be the best. You want to do a good job. It's a cutthroat, environment. And it can be really difficult. And I think that making people know that what they have to say, it definitely is important, but also just open your mind up to not only expanding on what you originally thought, but also thinking about, did you know that somebody else standing right next to you could have these same exact feelings and have the same exact level of importance? And we would be stronger if we just talked. And it's not about who's better than the other, but it's about we are getting paid to get a job done. And that is the most important thing. And you wouldn't be here if you weren't already worth it, if you weren't already worthy of your position. And so, regardless of whatever anybody else has to say, it's more so just knowing that. And I think that because, again, everybody wants to feel heard and they want to feel important, they often always talk each other down. And now everybody's insecure and everybody feels like their job is being, questioned, or whether or not they're good enough. And I just feel like we're all here. We're all good enough, right? We're already at the table. So let's focus on the task at hand. And the way we do that is to make people feel acknowledged. It's so simple, but you would be surprised that by making somebody feel acknowledged, the difference it makes.
And so, even though even though they may have like different viewpoints, different egos, different feelings, thoughts, and stuff like that, your superpower in a sense is to is to be able to communicate with each one of them, right? And then to make them feel acknowledged, to have them be acknowledged. But at the same time, is it also like what is it that because when they come, when you bring them together, right? They have they have different perspectives, obviously, and then you bring them together. Um, it's like, do they when they do come together, do they still have maybe some like, they don't necessarily agree with you on this and that, but you somehow are able to like get them to like work together, right? Or to move forward.
Absolutely. So I state that this person thinks this person thinks that, and it may be a difference of opinion, but the approach is both of the approaches are correct. You're just approaching it from different angles. So it's not their perspective should not negate yours. It's just that you're looking at it from a different angle, and both of your angles, we need to find a way for it to meet, for the common goal of finishing this project, for completing this deliverable, for whatever the goal is. We're always doing something to complete something, right? This is human nature. No matter where you work, you're working for some reason, right? For some end goal or purpose. And whether or not that purpose is purposeful to you, it is still for a purpose, right? And so I think that when people think about their perspective, when they speak to somebody else, it's like, oh, they're wrong because I think this. No, they're not wrong. They're thinking of it from a different angle. And now we need to make sure that your angles align so that they meet. And how can we bring both of those perspectives together in a way that can make this, useful for the situation? And I think that when people think about it that way and they're like, well, I'm not completely giving up what I thought. I'm just trying to figure out how what I think can connect with this person's thought. And when they think about it like that, they're no longer feeling like they need to defend their position. It's more like, how can I make my position fit in the situation?
Fascinating. Yeah. It's like before they're like very like tightly held on. It's like very protective. It's like, but it's almost like
Like,
I'm
I'm
right.
right. Like,
Like
I have all these years of experience. It's me. Like, if I don't they don't go my way, then what am I used for? And I'm like, you are so useful. You're not always going to be right. You're not always going to be wrong, but you're still a part of this team. And sometimes what you have to say can fit in a situation, but I want you to come to that realization for yourself. I want you to assess the situation and see how your perspective can fit towards our goal. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. But when they come to that realization for themselves and they do that analysis for themselves, it's much easier for them to accept it than somebody else saying, no, we don't agree with this, or majority rules, let's move on, because now this person feels singled out, they don't feel heard, and it adds to the toxic work culture. And so for me, it's more so thinking about how do I allow this person to feel acknowledged, but also come to their own terms, giving them an opportunity to allow their perspective to fit in the situation. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. And it's not because it's anything about you, it just wasn't a good fit for the situation. And that's all. And so it's been very effective. I have implemented this in a lot of different situations. And, the emotions are always there in the beginning. The defensiveness is always there in the beginning. The egos are always there. And then throughout the process, they're like, I think this little piece that I said could probably fit, but everything else, I think we should take this and move it there. And then in the end, we're like, okay, perfect. Is everybody okay with this moving forward? And they say yes. And that's the end of it. But I think it's just like putting the puzzle pieces together. I like to take apart everybody's different feedbacks and comments and then put all the best parts of them together to solve a problem. So,
love it, love it.
and as long as one part of what somebody has to say, as long as they feel like they've contributed in some way, shape, or form, they don't lose their meaningfulness to themselves. I will still think that they're meaningful. But again, it's not about what I think. People will react how they react because of what they feel and think about themselves. It's never about you. And so it doesn't matter how much I say it, or it may even come off condescending, right? If I was to say you're meaningful after like completely shooting down their idea, right? And some people won't even take that the right way. And I think that there's no winning in that situation. And the only way to truly win is to allow people and give people that space to come to the realization for themselves. So that's just the way I approach communication, and it's been really successful. There's always common ground, no matter what you're doing. There will always be a piece of something from somewhere that you can put together and make it work. I have never seen a situation where there was no common ground. And it's just, and we like to do that as human nature, to find or to actually categorize something in a way that makes sense. And when it doesn't make sense, that's when we usually lash out, because we don't really know how to deal with that. We don't know how to process things that doesn't make sense to us. And so, we're not wired that way. But for me, I guess I'm wired a little bit different because I love that. I love that gray space. I love living in the space where things don't make sense, because that's where else are you going to be so you can make sense of the things? You have to start somewhere, right? And no one wants to sit there and untangle that ball of yarn, but I'm more than happy to do that. I think that that is where I feel the most comfortable is filling in those gaps and being that connector. And I think it really did start from my childhood when I connected and did that for my siblings. So
Now, some people they'd be like, yeah, and that was a very interesting, an interesting situation that you grew up in, and it's like I think for a lot of other people, it's like that could be a very very stressful, possible situation to be in, to be in that environment, busy, crowded, some all the different responsibility and things like that. But you're able to embrace it. You're able to use that as fuel to be able to propel you to where you are right now.
yeah, I mean, it also gave me debilitating anxiety and depression for a while, right? So it wasn't all puppies and rainbows, but yes, the positive stuff and the things that I got from it was amazing. But when you go through those types of things as a child, you will inevitably have childhood trauma. It was a part of the things that I had to heal from and had to kind of overcome within myself in the battles within myself. And while I had all of those things, I also had high functioning anxiety and depression and feeling the need to people please and all those things that comes with all of the everything that you do has a bad side. Life balances itself out that way. And so it was just so how do I kind of work through that, right? And I had to ask myself some hard questions. I had to do the hard work. I had to take a second and say I need to put boundaries in place. I need to, say no sometimes. People are not going to like that. But, if you need to say no to protect your peace and your energy and somebody reacts like in the most narcissistically possible, then you need to distance yourself from that person. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful, but it's absolutely necessary. You only live once and you don't want to live your life being miserable. And I think a lot of people accepted that as their reality. At least I did. I didn't realize it until I started to make space for myself, right? And if you keep making space for everybody else in your life, which is amazing, you just won't have any space for you. And I think that there is a balance between having space for people, but not forgetting yourself. And I think that's really important. And so while I had a lot of great things that I got from my childhood, I got a lot of bad things too. And again, it's all about being self aware and when you do know those things, sometimes you'll go walking through life and you're like, oh, that's what that is. I didn't realize. But it's not about, and it's not your fault, or you don't control what happens to you, but you definitely can control what you do next. And so for me, it was, swallowing that hard pill and saying, yeah, I do have anxiety. I do struggle with this and I should do something about that. And so I think that's also really important to mention as well.
Was there like a particularly like challenging point or like a low point that was just like a really like a wake up call for you? It's like, oh crap. And it just like really drilled in like that lesson, for you.
I wrote a book called What the Heal. It was actually one of the first books that I wrote last year. And it was about my childhood and how I overcame a lot of the things and relationships that I had, with people in my life growing up, and particularly the relationship with my mom and my dad and that whole situation, and how that impacted me and all of the things that I've gone through. I mentioned all my accomplishments, but it was from the perspective of my anxiety, from the perspective of my traumas, from my depression. So it was an entirely different perspective. And it kind of goes through my entire journey from that, how I overcame that. And I think my lowest point was when I went to the doctor and I think I just started uncontrollably shaking. I don't know what happened. They asked me some questions. Obviously, it triggered me. And I didn't realize my body was doing what it was doing. So our bodies remembers what our minds forces us to forget. So we will experience a lot of trauma and our minds will lock it away very tight in our subconscious to protect us. Because our body will essentially go into overdrive. A norepinephrine will be pumped through your entire body. You'll always be in this fight or flight survivor mode. And the body just cannot function like that 24/7. It really does take a toll. And it takes a lot of energy to function that way. And so your subconscious, when you usually suffer trauma, some people have amnesia, some people just don't know how to deal with it. So the mind protects you automatically. But the body, unfortunately, it has memory too. And the body does not forget. And you can't just take every ounce of that experience from the body and just lock that away as well. And so when you experience a trauma, only your memory gets protected. And so what I didn't realize was when questions were being asked to me at the doctor, my body remembered. And so my body was shaking, even though I couldn't process why I was being like that because my mind protected me from it. And so for me, I think that was my lowest point because I literally broke down. It was really bad. And that's when I realized I needed to see a therapist. So that I think was my lowest point. And again, it was more so going in overdrive and not allowing myself to even remember anything, right? And that's what happens when you've experienced trauma for so long. So
Yeah, and it's fascinating the connection between the mind and the body and like things being stored within the body and just different layers. And so that experience, what did you take from that, right?
it is just that willingness. I had to really come to terms with it. And if you are not ready and your fear is greater than your want to make progress, you are never going to make that progress. And so I was scared. Absolutely. I still had fear. But at some point, I just got so sick of what I was feeling and not facing it that my need to actually progress was stronger than the fear of denial. And so that is where that was a turning point for me. And it wasn't like I just woke up one day and was like, oh, I'm just gonna do this. It was I was sick of this. And it had a turning point on its own. And that's how it is for some people and other people it's not. A lot of people never make it to that point where they're sick of that because they haven't even made it to the point of awareness, right? So I had a stroke of luck to be aware with how my body responded in this moment. And now in the back of my mind, I knew what I was doing, how I was acting wasn't normal. Not that anything is normal, it wasn't, right. And I think that many people, when we live in survival mode, we don't know anything else. So we don't even know what we're doing is right or wrong, right? And so for me, because I had that experience that allowed me to become semi-aware, then my body was able to have its own time to process that awareness in of itself. Um, and so I think that a lot of people won't experience that unless they do have that type of awareness, or they do have someone in their life where they do have that moment where they realize I can't keep doing what I'm doing, right? Um, and so it's really complex. It's a really layered topic. It's not one thing or one way to go about it.
So how would a person listening, how would they even know? It's like if their body's in that the protection mode, if they're in survivor mode.
That's a good question. I mean, there are definitely some signs that you can know for yourself. Like deep down, if you feel like you have this kind of like, I don't know, emptiness or absentness inside of you where you're trying to understand that, or you just feel like, you know, you're doing things and just something feels incomplete. And that's the best way I can explain it. And as us as humans, we know, right? We may not know what it is, right? We may not truly understand it, but we know that there's a moment or there's an emotion in which we feel that no matter how much you've accomplished, if after you've accomplished something, you're happy and then you're guilty, or you're happy and then you're not that happy, or you already feel like you don't even deserve what you just got, you've definitely been living in survival mode, and it's something that you need to kind of look into. And it's not abnormal. There are many people who have worked incredibly hard and they win their achievements, and then after they say like, I don't deserve this, but you absolutely do. And they truly are not saying that to be humble. They're saying that because they truly believe they didn't deserve it. And they can't even enjoy what they just got because they feel that way. And I think that that kind of absentness, like something is missing, something is not connecting for me to truly enjoy what I just did, knowing all the work I just put into this. Um, and that can also be a breakthrough moment from an accomplishment standpoint. If you're trying to realize this from just a regular standpoint, not attached to an experience, not attached to an accomplishment, it's really hard. And I think that it all boils down to, again, that feeling, that emotion of no matter what you do, there's still this feeling of something is missing. That's definitely a part of you that is locked away that you haven't necessarily confronted. And you won't feel whole again unless you confront every single part of yourself. So that's the best way I can explain it. The only other thing I would add is just learn to be kind to yourself. Um, yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway is to be kind to yourself. I think listen to what your body's telling you because it's talking, you're just not listening. And a lot of the times we ignore it, right? And so I would say be kind to yourself and um, give yourself grace. Like nobody's success looks the same. And it took the owner of KFC, what was he like 80 before he was successful? I'm not saying it's gonna take anybody that long, but it's more so success looks different for everyone. But what makes you a failure is never trying. Trying and failing is not a failure. And so I think that being kind to yourself and just continuously to keep trying and keep showing up is the biggest thing.
And that's stuff that you apply for your life as well.
100%. I fall and I get right back up. I pop up like one of those little whack-a-moles, like the game. I fall, it hurts, I feel my feelings, I cry my cries, and I'm like, all right, what's next? Like, like and you have to, and you have to keep going. It definitely does work out. It's 100% worth it.
'Cause we live in fascinating times because especially with like social media and being able to, like going onto social media and then just seeing all these, maybe there's different people posting things about social media is almost like a highlight reel, right? It's like a highlight reel of a person's life. So from the outside, it's like, oh, everything's amazing. It's fascinating. Oh, I'm traveling here. I'm doing this. These are my successes and things like that. And so it can get easy. It can be easy to sometimes get caught up in that and just be like, oh, it's like, oh, look at my life, right? And it's like, oh, my life hasn't even compared to something like that. And so, like for your own journey as you were progressing through some of those challenges, what were you saying? What were you saying in your head to like kind of allow you to keep going? To work through that stuff.
Well, my parents were my biggest motivators. Well, it's a very complex relationship with my parents, but I did appreciate everything that they did. They did work every single day for me to have opportunities that I even had. And so I was very grateful to that. And so my dad and I used to have conversations that he always wanted to get an Italian sports car and like race in the Autobahn in Germany, like the fastest, like it doesn't have a speed limit, I think, on that highway. So I always wanted to actually be able to do that for him. And I know my mom always wanted to go to France and other places. And I wanted to pay that back to them. I wanted that to be something that hey, you worked 7 days a week for as long as I can remember. I want to be able to say thank you. But I never got that chance because they passed away. But still, that was my biggest motivator for a really long time. Is just to give back to my family.
So at the end of the day, like, how did you come to grips with that, right? In terms of being able to, because you wanted to, you had your parents, right? You had your mom, you had your dad working so much, and they had there's things that you wanted to give back, and then you never were able to give that, right? But how did you, even though they're not physically here, how did you come to that resolution in terms of like, okay, being in a happy place where like, oh, hey, it's like we're good and I'm good.
I don't know. It took a long. It's still a work in progress. But how did I keep going after they passed away? It was more so they didn't pass away at the same time. So my dad passed away first, about 6 years ago now, and my mom was still alive. And it became more like, even you probably can't see the inscription. This is my doctorate degree in the background, and it says, in love and memory of my dad. It's inscribed on my frame. So he passed away before I was able to get my doctorate degree. So I finished it for essentially like I paid an homage like that. I did it, like, kind of thing. Now when my mom passed away, it was really difficult. She actually just passed away this past September, and today is actually her birthday, believe it or not. And so it was really complicated for that piece for me because it was after the fact, right? And her death was pretty recent. So like I've already reached all the successes. So it's like, how do I keep moving forward now? And I'm kind of actually in that process right now. And some of the things that I'm doing every day is just showing up, right? I show up when I don't feel like I want to show up. I show up when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm angry, when I hate everything, when I love everything. I just keep showing up. And I just know that, you know, you just have to, right? You have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I think that kind of peace and happiness is knowing that because she was so sick that she is no longer in pain. Um, and also, I do know that she is very proud of me and all the things that I've done. And while we had a complicated relationship growing up, in the end, I love my mom. And so for me, it's just again, these things are messy. They're not clean cut. Three things can be true at the same time, right? So, how do you keep pushing? Is just knowing that it's going to be hard. No, give yourself the acknowledgement of what you've already done, and just at peace with knowing that it may not look like what you wanted it to look like, but you still have, you know, every other day to make a new vision, to put a new, thought process. I still have younger siblings. I still have family. I still have people in this world that matter, um, that I love, that I care about, that I want to pour into. So that keeps me going.
Awesome. Awesome. And yeah, there's a lot to celebrate. I mean, like it's yeah, your mom's birthday today, and I mean, like I'm
I
sure,
know.
yeah, and I'm sure like she was, yeah, they're really proud and they're proud and just happy and grateful for like all the things that you've done, right? All the things that you accomplished and the things that you still continue to do, right? In your life and then in your, your family's life and the community. It's like, especially with all your siblings and stuff like that, you're still playing that role. What projects are you working on now?
Yeah, so I'm working on a lot of different projects right now. So I am an author. I love writing. I am so passionate about explaining things, experiences, putting words to paper, and just describing life processes, whatever you want to call it. And so I have two books that I published last year, What the Heal that I discussed. And then the other book is Burst the Bubble, A Look into Careers in the Pharmaceutical Industry. I was able to meet with Good Morning America. I was on the Times Square billboard last May. It was really cool. It won many different awards. So if you're interested in learning about the pharmaceutical industry, that is something I would recommend reading. My most recent book, which is my third one, Life But Make It Manageable, really talks about not just about creating habits, but getting yourself in the right mindset to even start making those habits, right? So um, there's a whole bunch of steps before you just start waking up and like starting slow with doing one thing. You have to be in the right mindset. And if you're not in the right mindset, you're never going to be making habits that stick, right? So that book really talks about those aspects. So that's kind of what I'm doing in the writing realm, as well as in my company, Felices Consulting. I'm doing a lot of really cool, fun things in tech. And so I am launching a AI technology for clinical research companies called ASUS. So ASUS by Lasus. I know it's cheesy, but I love the name. But yeah, so it's a AI technology that's supposed to streamline and help with clinical research and trials from an administrative standpoint. And I say this really, um, it's, some people don't like the way I say it, but essentially people are dying because of paperwork, right? There's a lot of regulations, a lot of administrative bottlenecks when it comes to medications, not just in the US, but globally, but I'm US focused and US based. And for me, again, being the connector that I am, like to look at things at a big picture and say, okay, 80% of clinical trials fail, and this is $1 trillion industry. How is that possible? How is 80% of those trials failing and only 20% gets approved by the FDA? All right. And so it's such a high number of failure. And there's so many amazing treatments, products, biologics that could have been available. And, not saying all of the 80% is due to, administrative aspects. Some of that failure is due to the efficacy of the drug or product just really didn't work. But there is a large percentage, about 30% of that 80%, that is due to bottlenecks about, running out of money because we had administrative issues, organization issues, communication with the set, like, oh, all these things that could have been prevented is contributing to the failure. And so that's where I felt like me being the connector and the communicator that I love to be, that I'm going to create a company that really focuses on that. And so I put all my best skills together, my love of writing, my love of coding, my love of math and data, everything you can think of. I put it together and I made this company. And this software is truly supposed to speed up a lot of different bottlenecks like budgets, contracts. You would be surprised how long a contract can go, 8 months. And that entire time, you're still paying 800 plus people working on this project. So you're going to run out of money. And if you run out of money, you have nothing for the actual trial itself, right? So it's just thinking about how can you shorten these timelines to 2 months, even 1 month, so that we have more time and more money to focus on actually delivering these treatments effectively to patients, maybe focusing on resourcing and training the people in the industry, giving people the opportunity to grow, not feeling like you're in this fight or flight situation. And so for me, I really wanted to create a company that fills in those gaps and accelerates research for the future. I want to innovate, and that's kind of what I always dreamed of doing, and I get a chance to do that with my own
Love
company.
it. And that you are. And you're bringing in all your skills and all your talents and abilities that not everybody wants to do. Some people don't want to get into all those like the data and the statistics and all that. And it's like, no, it's like you got that. It's like,
Yeah, I'm like, don't worry, I got you.
who are the ideal people that you're looking for, to work with right now?
Anyone willing to find their passion, reach out to me. I will help you find your passion. I will give you tools, tips, tricks, um, as a mentor, right? Whether you're in the clinical research industry or not. If you have made a decision and woke up today and you're like, I have no idea where to begin. I don't even know if I'm in the right mindset, but I want to find my passion. I want to do this. I want to have my breakthrough. If you feel that way, then I'm more than happy to help.
What do you think for those people who are having those challenges, who are in that industry? Like what would be their challenge, in terms of
Getting into it, oh, it's really hard. It's a very competitive industry to get into clinical research. But there's many different paths. You just have to know somebody that knows the paths. And it's even when you're in there, like I started at a very entry level position, like as a coordinator, like the bottom of the totem pole. You honestly don't need any experience to have that job, and the pay is terrible. And I started there and I loved the work. I really did. And then I worked my way up in the industry, and it's really hard to work your way up in the industry. You got to know somebody, or you have to work the 18 to 20-hour days to just be the best you can be. And so through all of that, hard work and just being in the right places at the right time and knowing the right people is just as important. But then when you do, and when you are in those right places and you are in the right rooms at the right time, you have to be ready. You have to be prepared, or you're going to miss that opportunity. And so it's both of those things happening at the same time. And it's actually very hard. And I mentored a few people in the clinical research industry that I'm currently mentoring right now. And just giving them tips. They're like, oh, wow, I work in this industry, but I didn't realize this and that is a huge industry. And so it's really hard sometimes, again, to look at that big picture. And so it's like giving them that bird's eye view about this is what your thought of this, but this is actually how it works in this within the space of research. And is this actually what you want to do? They're like, no, I actually want to do this. So I was like, oh, okay. So this area actually does what you're envisioning. And it's more like a aha moment, like, oh, okay, so this is where I need to go. And it's more so, how do I get there? And I'm like, well, there's many different paths, right? And so depending on where you are, depending on what your experience is, your path is going to look different from someone else. But the main takeaway is that there is still a path, and it can still be your end goal if that's the industry you want to be in. And there's always a path, is what I say. It's a wonderful industry. It's a huge industry, and we're not all mad scientists in lab coats. There's a lot of, passionate, wonderful people in this industry. So.
and I trust that the right people who are, the right people who are listening in, they'll be able to hear this message and they'll be able to take that and to be able to run with it. Yeah, I just wanted to get that clarification because what you're talking about it's kind of like a foreign language to me. a little bit, So I'm I'm just like, okay, how can we just like, how can we make sure that there's like we simplify or at least deliver value, find a way to deliver value to whoever is listening in whatever format, right? And so we can either be very general or we can go very like niche, very specific. And so it's like whoever, so I just that's my intention. It's like whoever is listening, it's like we can bring them in and deliver them value somehow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for that. And so how can people learn more about you? Where can they find you, Tia?
Yeah, you can find me. You can go on my website, laceusconsulting.com. I mostly on LinkedIn. So Tia Warrick, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty engaged. I do talk at a bunch of different conferences. So if you are attending a conference, you can always check out my conference page on my website to see if I will be speaking there. And then feel free to reach out to me via email. My info at laceusconsultingllc.com. It's also on my website. I get queries from people all the time. I'm happy to have a conversation and help you understand more about the industry or just more about what you want to do. I am happy to kind of gauge and mentor people in that way. And I have for a lot of people. So I don't think there's anything else from my end. I just hope people, again, find some inspiration in my words and do something that you love today. Just one thing for yourself. And again, be kind to yourself. You will find your way, you will find your path, you will find your breakthrough, whether it's through experiences, whether it's through words you found in this podcast, whether it's through a book, you will find your inspiration. We all do. It's just at different timelines. And if you want to accelerate that path and you want to take ownership of that and kind of steer that ship, um, just know that you can and you are already enough. And to give yourself a chance, you'll be surprised what you can accomplish.
I love that. I love that. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate you. Shared a lot of nuggets of wisdom, and especially with the different books that are out there as well. Like, I'm sure there's a lot more in there that's like, okay, that's going to give a lot more insight into like, oh, okay, that'll start to unlock the doors of the possibility. So cool. Very cool.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great to have you.